Good afternoon, friends. Stephen DeNoon here with Israeli News Live, and wanted to touch some subjects here, very interesting things that are going on in the world right now, and bring some things to your attention. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is I'd gotten a couple of emails from a good Israeli friend of mine over in Israel, Israeli journalist, who had shared with me one of those issues there was the Egyptians started back in early 2016, had begun a major engineering operation to dry up the coastline of the Egyptian naval base at the port of Ras El Tin in Alexandria. He stated here that this is a strip of beach about 3,300 meters long, 325 meters wide. The works are intended to double the area of the naval headquarters beach facilities. He said at the same time, construction began on a new port for the Navy located outside the military dock at Ras El Tin port. For this purpose, a breakwater approximately 3,300 meters long was built, and 3 platforms with a total length of approximately 1,400 meters was erected. He said the work on the docks was apparently completed in the second half of 2020. And in December, one of the fleet's 2 helicopter carriers was seen moored at the site. Construction of the port coastal facilities has not yet begun. In addition to the new port, the construction of a new pier about 540 meters long was located inside the existing port, and the works were completed in 2018. Since then, various types of warships have been moored there. The construction of the new port and the wharf is part of a plan to double the number of ports used by the Egyptian Navy. As part of this plan since 2013, 9 ports have been built or expanded. A source estimates that Egyptian Navy is improving its capabilities because of the conflict with Turkey over the economic waters and Turkey's involvement in the war in Libya. There are also those who estimate that the Egyptians are preparing for a confrontation with Israel. Now, when my good friend Leor had sent this to me, I also wrote him back and I reminded him that it was the only reason why the Egyptians have these 2 ships here is because of the Russians. You know, these ships were built for Russia by the French government, but when all this nonsense began, the Russian collusion and all the evils of Russia that was going on really began to get at the very height of this new Cold War that got started. The French backed out on the deal and would not allow the Russians to buy the ship. Of course, a lot of pressure by the U.S. government caused that, and that was, of course, before Trump became president of the United States. And so therefore, we ended up with the Egyptians purchasing the ships, and I'm sure Russia made sure they had the funds to be able to do so. And Russia also made sure that the Egyptians would be fully equipped with all the attack helicopters that it needed to be supplied for those 2 ships there. And Russia has been working very closely with Egypt ever since then. But this whole idea that there are some that believe that their estimates that the Egyptians are preparing for a confrontation with Israel, if that be so, it'll be an orchestrated effort in order to make it look like a Gog of Magog war and that Russia's the big bad boogeyman. Well, I can tell you now, Putin is working very closely with Netanyahu, and so I don't see that happening at all. Speaking of Netanyahu, I'm going to be sharing on a Patreon video tomorrow some interesting information that I caught that Netanyahu, when he was talking about Israel's plan. I'd gotten a very interesting video from a friend of mine there where Netanyahu is showing what Israel is doing to combat, the current situation going on. But it's what he says in the video that made me realize that this is a much greater agenda than you could ever imagine. Anyway, I want to move on, though, cover some more issues here that are going on. Hamas is trying to blame the IDF for an incident that took place at the sea a few days ago when the fishermen were killed. According to Hamas version, the IDF UAV fell into the sea and was apparently caught in a fishing net. Sometime later, the UAV exploded and 3 fishermen were killed. The head of Gaza Fishermen Association also blamed Israel for the incident. The occupation destroyed a fishing boat owned by the Alaham family in the Sea of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The 3 fishermen were killed, considered martyrs. The martyrs' deaths will not be in vain, as the Hamas leadership is saying. The IDF says that the incident in Gaza occurred due to a work accident, apparently during an activity by Hamas naval forces. It was also stated that the IDF forces did not fire at the boat. According to another source, just before 9 in the morning, Hamas launched 7 rockets with a diameter of 107 millimeters. From the center of the Gaza Strip, the missiles were launched into the depths of the sea as part of an experiment to determine the accuracy of Hamas launchers. One of the rockets lost altitude and hit the fishing boat off the coast of Khan Yunis, and the missile fell near a fishing boat, killing 3 and wounding 2. And now the Islamic Jihad is threatening to take revenge on Israel following the deaths of the fishermen. So the question is, we can't ever really tell who's telling the truth on this, right? It really becomes kind of crazy, kind of nutty. I'm going to kind of get into that in an indirect way over another incident that I have that'll come up right after this here. But in fact, let's just go ahead and go to it real quick. This is something that the WSJ.com put out. News exclusive: Israeli strikes target Iranian oil bound for Syria. The Israeli campaign at sea marks a new dimension in the country's campaign to counter Iran's military and economic entrenchment and its support of its allies there. Rania Khalik had put this out, said Israel has targeted a dozen vessels carrying Iranian oil to Syria. Both Iran and Syria are under murderous sanction. Looks like they can't even send fuel to each other without disruption, which has caused shortages in Syria, already suffering so much. Now look at those 2 gaping holes there in this oil tanker. Israel causing this. Now, here's what's interesting. I'd gotten some information not too long ago, and I didn't actually report on it very much. And this is where there was a tanker, an alleged Iranian tanker that had been leaking oil into the Gulf there that caused some severe ecological damage along the shores of Israel. Not only the shores of Israel, of course, Gaza, Lebanon, etc. And it was all blamed on Iran for causing it. But now we're finding out the truth of the matter. Israel is attacking these ships, and Israel is causing their own ecological disaster. It kind of reminds me of the USS Liberty. Remember how that Israel attacked that ship there and never would own up to it, never apologized for it, but the Americans watched as Israeli warplanes tried to sink the USS Liberty, right? No accountability has ever been brought up. But then I get all these interesting emails about, and maybe the friend of mine that sends them to me, maybe really feel like that this is something that the Iranians did intentionally. They caused a leak on their ship. But now we're finding out that Israel is bombing the Iranian tankers because they're trying to deliver oil to Syria. And they're not going along with the New World Order Beast Kingdom plan. So what do? They bomb the ships. So Israel caused their own ecological disaster as a result of this. And yet blaming it on Iran. It's just nuts, right? Absolutely nuts, the things that are going on there. That's something we're not allowed to say on our channel right there. You saw the picture. You can stop the video and see for yourself what happened there. I won't say anything on this particular broadcast about it. Also, I did find out that Russia and China are about to collaborate on an ambitious space project. The 2 countries have agreed that very soon they will start building a station on the moon. According to the Russians, this is a complex intended for research. It is expected to be built on the lunar soil, or alternative, a station that will orbit the moon. The Russians intend to allow other countries to use the experimental research complex as well. Moscow has long been looking for the opportunity to develop the existing space industry that has reached many achievements in the past. The Russian space program has suffered in recent years from budget shortages and corruption. And Russian knowledge is lagging behind Americans' knowledge on the subject, and gaps have only widened in the wake of NASA's recent achievements and research they're doing on Mars. Well, a lot more than just doing research on Mars. We have had a base on Mars for the last 20 years. Don't know if America is going to disclose that yet, but we know that Chaim Eshed, the former head of the Israeli space program, disclosed that the Americans did have a base on Mars. I'd actually shared, I think, that with you guys before. Most people thought I was nuts for saying that, but there's a whole lot more that we have, and more I'll begin to share some of that over on our Patreon channel. Because a lot of interesting things that's shared with me, and maybe I'll go back and share some more things that I've not shared in the past there as well. Anyway, so the Chinese are also interested in developing the field together with the experience of the Russians. They believe that they will reach respectable achievements there. So at any rate there. I'd been speaking to you again about these fireballs, these meteorites, and I don't have the video. Maybe I'll be able to publish the video here for you here. Another one, this is over Oklahoma sky here. Another big meteorite come flying down, and KOCO5 ABC News had shared that on their channel. Just the other day, we had the one that during broad daylight, had the meteorite that caused a sonic boom that came up across, what was that? Was that New Hampshire? I forget now. Forget exactly where. Somewhere up north near the Canadian border there. So more and more you're going to see that, especially this month, next month, etc. In fact, I was kind of curious. I know that Mike from around the world was on with Paul this evening. So 10:45. Ooh, it's already 12:30 in the morning my time. So, but anyway, so I'm hoping to be able to see if he actually talks about this as well. But yeah, and whatever we see coming up next couple of months here in September, we're supposed to see double that. But again, still no dinosaur ending life on Earth type events. But you're going to start seeing more and more of this, and I think you'll begin to realize that what I was saying last year, although yes, some of that was not accurate as far as what I was told by one source there, but we are definitely going to see things more and more over the next couple of years heating up, and I think we'll begin to realize this is not a joke. Anyway, continuing on, also the launch of an asteroid deflection demonstrator slips to November. That's another issue there. Well, if NASA is taking and putting out some kind of space flight thing there in order to deflect asteroids, try to keep them from hitting the Earth, which I already know we have the technology for that. We actually do that much deeper in space with spaceships that we're using out there. But at any rate there, this here is just that much more that you can see that, yeah, we're doing something because these things are real. Anyway, I'm Steve DeNoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and God bless.